First off, with coaches, I think, and I was talking to a former player of mine named Owen Schmidt. I don't know if people remember Owen. He was a great fullback for me. And he's a high school coach now down in small town West Virginia. And I said, you are changing lives. There's a lot of high school coaches and youth league coaches that take a lot of kids that maybe not have the best home life, whatever, and they actually change their lives forever by being their mentor, by being their coach, by leading them on to whether it's college ball or having a great experience in high school or what have you. So there's so many negative things out there. I think high school coaches are the least appreciated, probably doctors too, but high school coaches in any sports are probably one of the least. High school coaches and probably police officers are the least appreciated professionals in our country, in any sport.
What's up, everybody? It's Lavar Arrington here, and I have a treat for you. We got Coach Rich Rodriguez. He makes his triumphant return back to his hometown, his home state of West Virginia. He's now the new head coach of the Mountaineers, and we talk about his impact on the game, the impact that it had on him, and talked about, the evolution of offense with the quarterbacks and the RPOs and the no huddles and the 2-minute drills, but not being a 2-minute drill offense, just being a 2-minute style of offense. We talked about a lot of things, and I'll tell you what, I enjoyed every moment of it, and you will too. Get locked in. Here we go. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Lock in. It's time for Good in the Game podcast. Here we go. All right, Coach. Gotta ask you. The game. This is called Good in the Game, and the one question that I always lead off with is, what has this game meant to you? What has it represented for you on and off of the field? This game of football, the good in the game.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm a small town West Virginia guy that first off, football gave me an opportunity to go to school. I walked on here at West Virginia, but I got a scholarship after my first year. So really it paid for my education, had a great experience. And then certainly over the last 40 years or so and 28 as a head coach, it's given me a wonderful career, a lot of great memories, being able to have a lot of good times and doing something that you love. As I've always, it was never a job for me. It was always a vocation, an opportunity. And so I'm blessed, 61 still to be able to do that. So I've had a blast with it. And I just love what the game of football is and what it's done for so many people.
Indeed. Now, you have a great connection with the National Football Foundation. Talk to me a little bit about, what the NFF represents to you and your work as it applies to your connection to the promotion of what the National Football Foundation represents.
Yeah, having been a head coach so long, you get an opportunity to meet so many people in different areas, but especially people that work with the National Football Foundation and what they've done for the game of football. And also I was past president of AFCA, American Football Coaches Association. So we had a close relationship with all the folks as well. And, it's always interesting to see the stats about how many high school kids, how many college guys, get an opportunity because of the game of football. And so I take it a little personal. I'm sure you do too, when people attack the game and or try to say something negative about it. And there's always things that are maybe you'd like to have a little bit better, whatever. But the overwhelming amount of people that follow our great game and the people that, like the National Football Foundation, that do so much for the sport, has changed lives and changed lives every day. And I think that's the biggest input that the foundation does and the biggest impact we have as coaches.
You mentioned being from, I'm a Pittsburgh guy, so we're backyard brawlers. Even though I didn't go to Pitt, obviously, but obvious to me is what football represents in our area, our neck of the woods. How'd you get involved with football? Like, how Just walk me back. What's the history lesson? What's the history story on how you got involved in playing the game?
Yeah, as you know, like Western Pennsylvania and North and all parts of West Virginia, where I grew up in North Central West Virginia, is a blue collar, hardworking people that Friday night was Friday night football time. And I grew up in a little coal mining town called Granttown, West Virginia. My dad was a coal miner. It's interesting. Nick Saban grew up 10 minutes away in one little town. Jimbo Fisher was 15 minutes in the other direction. And
Wow.
so football was a big deal for Friday night for all the coal miners. Friday night coming out and watching high school football was a big deal. And so I fell in love with the game early. I had a great high school experience at North Marion High School there in North Central West Virginia. And I always thought that sports in general was a no, I don't want to say a way to get out, but a way to maybe see the world, the way to maybe have a chance to do something special in this life. And I had other people from my area that had done that, and so it was very similar, I'm sure, to you, the Western Pennsylvania. There's a lot of in this part of the country. There's good football, but there's great passion for football, and there always has been.
And you mentioned that great passion. It led to you being the youngest head coach in all of college at 25 at Salem. What was that like? Where did you know what was I mean, that's so young.
Yeah.
How did you feel going into that, knowing that at the age you were at, you were now
Yeah.
starting this journey? And did you think that it would last this long? Did you think that you'd last this long in the game?
Yeah, I always tell everybody, I was the youngest college head coach in America at Salem College at the age of 24, and the youngest fired at
24.
25.
Dang.
But yeah, they dropped the school. The school was a private school, Salem College, and they got bought out by a private university and dropped sports. 2 weeks before my wedding, and I'm like, and I really didn't. I mean, I was a head coach, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just faking it. I was just trying to learn as I was going. But I got an experience with it, and I knew if I stayed in the sport after all that happened, lost my job 2 weeks before the wedding. All none of the players could come back. All their scholarships were canceled, whatever. If I stuck with it then, I knew I was going to be a lifer. And I stayed with it. I wanted to stay in college. I wanted to prove myself. And I was fortunate a year later to get another small college job at Glenville State. And that's when it all kind of took off, doing the spread, no huddle stuff and having a lot of fun there. But I never doubted my love for the game. I started to question, geez, is this the right profession? But I knew once I stayed in it then, at that young age, despite the adversity, that I would hopefully have a career in it. And it's just, I've been blessed to be able to have, 28 years as being a head coach and have a lot of great players and coaches with me.
That's amazing. And you brought up the no huddle and you brought up the spread. You also, in a lot of ways, was one of the godfathers of what we would probably call the RPO. And a name that comes to mind for me is Pat White. I was a big fan of Pat White, and I know that was during your time. Talk about that evolution, because to me, what we see now, Pat White was probably ahead of his time. Guys like that would probably be megastars in today's NFL. You were a little bit ahead of your time with how you were looking at the X's and O's of how you handled the offense. What went into that evolution of you going down the path of that multi-threat quarterback, but it was more about read and pass option versus it just being, this is a running quarterback that can throw, or, whatever the thought process may have been in terms of, schematically with your quarterbacks being that type of player.
Yeah, they say necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so when you're at a small school and you don't maybe have all the resources or all the guys, okay, what can you do that's a little bit different? And back then, I was a defensive guy in college. I was a defensive guy when I started my career. But then when I went to Glenville, I'm like, okay, I'm going to switch over the offense. And then I started thinking, Lavar, what's the hardest thing to go against as a defensive thing? And I always thought, well, every time you went somebody went in their 2-minute offense, they went up and down the field. And I'm like, well, let's just try that the whole game. What do we got to lose, right? So we said, we'll get us a quarterback, get in the shotgun, do kind of a 2-minute drill the whole game, make conditioning a factor. And then if we could get a quarterback that can run a little bit, now all of a sudden we're playing with 11 instead of playing with 10. And, that you can read that in. And so now you got numbers in a run game. Because back in the day when you're in a shotgun, all you could do is run the draw. Well, once we started running the zone read out of the shotgun and reading that in, now you had a whole different dynamic. And then when you get guys like Pat White and Rasheed Marshall, then I had Denard Robinson and all those guys, King, all those guys that could really run, now all of a sudden you got a whole different dynamic that they had not seen much of before, and we just kind of took off with it.
All right, you brought up Denard Robinson.
Tell me the
story. Yeah. Tell me, I mean, it's always a story that's got to come up. How first off, how do you play? Which I know there's elastic on your tongue of your shoe sometimes, so it could be overstated that he didn't have shoelaces. But how did he get away with wearing no shoelaces?
Well, so here's what happened. So Denard, when we start running, people, we like to go no huddle and go fast. Well, he didn't like to tie his shoes, and so he could run with them. But once he got tackled, they'd rip his shoes off and toss them. And so it slowed us down, 35, 45 seconds every time. I said, Denard, we got to do something about that. Well, we were in Adidas school, so we contacted Adidas, and they sent us some shoes that had Velcro. So instead of having to tie them, he just Velcro the shoes, and so it kept the shoes on his feet. So that allowed us to go a little bit faster. And he was a joy to coach too, because I remember we were playing Notre Dame, and we won. It was at Notre Dame. We played well. Denard had like 28 carries for like 250 yards or something, and we won the game. And the first question I get afterwards from the media was like, do you think you ran him too much? I said, first off, he wasn't complaining. Second off, the ball only weighs like 18 ounces, so it's not that heavy. And I said, if we had the ball 6 more times, he'd had 6 more carries, just so you know. But, he was a lot of fun to coach.
You return back to your stomping ground. So now you're back home after a little while. And you mentioned Denard. And the reason why I know Denard so well, obviously, because, we had to deal with you and your well-coached teams. And, it's interesting to watch just the way your career has gone. You end up at Jacksonville State, and you did well there, and now have the opportunity to come back to West Virginia. What is the challenge this time around? And now seeing your style of offense running rampant across both levels, all levels, high school, college, pro, you being basically the godfather of this style of play, being back at a major school, a Power 4 school. What's your thought process going into this now?
Yeah, I had been back in 17 years, and I say this, and it sounds like coach speak, LeVar, but I said, I'm not the same coach I was 17 years ago. I expect my players to get better every year. I need to do the same as a coach. So I'm a better coach now than I was a year ago, and better than I was 17 years ago. And the game has not changed as much, but circumstances around the game have changed. Okay. And so as a coach, you got to evolve. You're paying players now. You got different dynamics at play with the transfer portal, and you can still have the right culture. You can still coach the same way we did, but you got to understand that there's a little different dynamic involved in college athletes than there was before, and we have to adjust as coaches. Now, I didn't look a whole lot at the roster. I think we only have, total 2 starters coming back on the whole team. So we might be the most inexperienced team in the country going in. But what WVU has done over the last 10 to 12 years as far as facilities go, it's unbelievable. We put $55 million into our facility, and I was blown away about everything that we have here from a big-time football atmosphere and facility standpoint. And, of course, now, that's important, but you also got to have enough revenue to pay your players with the rev share, which we're going to be able to do in June as well. So we're set up to have some success. We got to do a good job recruiting. We got to do a good job of developing, and we still got to have the culture. I still believe that you got to have the right culture to win. You got to have really good players and a really good culture, and they play really hard. And I think people can watch you and you see if you play hard or not. They may not know the X's and O's, but they can see if you're playing hard. And our guys will play hard. That part I can promise.
Do you still value that quarterback to do the things that your quarterbacks have done historic? I said Pittsburgh. I'm a Major Harris guy. Like
Yeah,
you can't mention West Virginia without mentioning Major Harris, and he's one of our legends of legends from the Bird, and he's one of those original dual threat quarterbacks.
sure.
And
Great one.
and you can right, and you continue to grow. What that represents. Do we see in the near future a player like Pat White, a player like Major, or a player like Denard being the quarterback at West Virginia? And hopefully, we're not playing you when you find that quarterback. If the answer is yes.
Yeah, sure. Hope so. And what's funny is that it used to be everybody copied, like colleges and high schools copied what the NFL did, right? It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
trickled down. Now it's kind of trickling up. Colleges are doing what some high schools are doing. You see in an NFL doing a lot of so-called college schemes now, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Jaden Daniels. You're getting athletic guys. And people who say, well, you don't want your quarterback to get hurt. He's 15, 16% of your salary cap. If he gets hurt, well, I see more quarterbacks getting hurt sitting in a pocket than I do running down the field, getting away from pressure. And so
Mm-hmm.
I tell our quarterbacks, if we're running it right, you're not getting tackled by the big guys. You're getting tackled by the corners who don't really want to tackle half the time anyway. So that's kind of our thought process. We're not going to have him run over people and all that, but our quarterbacks all at least have to be willing runners. And if they've got a little bit of a wiggle to them and got a little speed to them, that's great. Last year at Jack State, we had a kid named Tyler Huff who probably was a 4.7, 4.8 guy, but he had just enough athleticism to make the first guy miss, and then he'd run over a DB. And he ran for 1,000 yards and was not hurt the whole year. So
Right.
we've got some of those guys, and we'll continue to recruit those guys that allow us to play with 11.
What would your advice be? Because again, I feel like doing this podcast allows me the opportunity to basically highlight what is special about this game. And I asked you early on what the game meant to you and different things, the National Football Foundation. What would your advice be to first aspiring coaches? What would your advice be to them and how they represent this game? And what would your advice be to today's athlete? Because for both, it is a very, very different landscape than what the traditional landscape of football has represented for us and in this culture and this community. What would your advice be to the coach and to the player?
That's a great question. First off, with coaches, I think and I was talking to a former player of mine named Owen Schmidt. I don't know if people remember Owen. He was a great fullback for me. And he's a high school coach now down in small town West Virginia. And I said, you are changing lives. There's a lot of high school coaches and youth league coaches that take a lot of kids that maybe not have the best home life, whatever, and they actually change their lives forever by being their mentor, by being their coach, by leading them on to whether it's college ball or having a great experience in high school or what have you. So there's so many negative things out there. I think high school coaches are the least appreciated, probably doctors too, but high school coaches in any sports are probably one of the least high school coaches and probably police officers are the least appreciated professionals in our country in
Mm.
any sport. And so I encourage those people to continue to coach in high school ball, youth ball, because you're changing lives. And then from the athlete standpoint, I would like to, first I'll say, listen, you got a great opportunity, but don't have a sense of entitlement. You're not entitled to anything. Anything that you want to have, you got to earn success. And by earning it, you're going to feel a whole lot better about it, and you're going to have success for a lot longer time than if you think you're entitled to something.
Yeah, man, that's great words, man. That's great words. And coach, you're a great man, and I wish you all the best. I wish you all the luck in the world. I think we're done. We're done playing West Virginia, right? Penn
Yeah.
State is where we
Well,
finished it. Was it?
thank God, and thank God there's not too many of young Lavars out there because I don't want to have to block them.
You know what's
Yeah,
crazy? My son just got enrolled. He's an early enrollee at Penn State. So, and he's a linebacker. So
there is a thing called a transfer portal. Just so you know, I'm just I'm just saying.
I hear you, and listen, you are the type of coach that I would enjoy my son being under their tutelage. But totally appreciate you taking the time out to impart some time and wisdom on our listening audience. It's so important for me to be able to, again, illustrate what is great about our game. And you are part of what's great about our game, Coach. Wish you all the luck in the world.
You too. You're on the all-time best. Appreciate you.
Everyone, that was Coach Rodriguez. I tell you what an outstanding coach, what an outstanding man, and a representation of what's good in our game. That's right. You know what? If you missed any of our previous shows, make sure you go check us out on YouTube and visit the National Football Foundation website as well. You can also find us wherever it is that you get your podcast from as well. So make sure you rate, subscribe, and let us know how you think, what you think about the show. But we have really, I have really enjoyed this journey of doing these shows with such distinguished and amazing men that are associated with our great game of football. Till next time, I'm Lavar Arrington. This is National Football Foundation's Good in the Game.